Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 167th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much for listening. As always, we always appreciate that. With me today, I have the New England Hockey Journal's Evan Marinovsky, who you also see gracing the airwaves on Nesson, talking about all things hockey. Evan, how's it going, buddy?
It's good, Haggs. It's good to be back. And we were talking before, busy time of year. There's a lot of hockey going on, but that's what you love. I love this time of year. It's like Christmas for me. So
this is the best time of year. The MIA playoffs are going on. You were talking about prep playoffs. The club playoffs are happening this weekend. State tournament games are happening this weekend, too, for the youth hockey levels. I know Newton's got some teams there. Our state tournament for the Pee Wee team is in a couple weeks. But that is such a super fun time of year. And it turns it like, for me, I don't know what the hell is going to happen this weekend in Marlboro, because I know the state tournament is going on there. And then Finn has his club playoffs. That's the playoff site for his club team in their division. Good
luck finding parking.
Oh, dude, our first game is 7:40 p.m. on Saturday night for the playoffs, which is totally because there's going to be like state tournament games going on there all day long before we even get there.
7:40 for that age is wild.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they're Pee-wees now, so like they have 8 p.m. practices. They're starting to get to the age where it's a little bit late, but it's just like, you have 3 games in a playoff, 3 playoff games in a weekend. And when the first one's 7:40 p.m. on a Saturday night, you're like, what the hell's going on? That's a little weird.
The hell?
But it's because the state tournament is using the Marlboro rink like all day long before you get to that point. So I totally get it. So if you're going to Marlboro this weekend, it's going to be a friggin' animal house even more than usual, and going to be an absolute zoo. So get prepared for that. I'm Joe Haggerty. I am the host of Pucks with Haggs. Thank you for listening. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. Get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, do a little Q&A as well, which I'll be doing today on Friday with the readers, the loyal readers. So get a subscription there, too. Good stuff in all of the sports there. All right, before we get into it, let's also thank Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Another loss last night, Evan. 2-1, Bruins lose to the Islanders. 5 losses in a row now. 3 losses coming out of the Four Nations break. And, it's funny. I really expected a little bit of a ripple, a little bit of a surge coming out of the break or coming out of the weekend when Don Sweeney basically kind of, said that guys are going to start getting traded, and they had already basically made an analysis on this team that, it sounded like they're going to be sellers and they're not really going to do much as far as trading in at the deadline, and sort of using his, the Don Sweeney coded language to basically say they're going to be sellers at the deadline.
We're punting.
Yeah, kind of expected the Bruins to react to that, like with some anger, with winning a couple of games, trying to show them that they shouldn't be sellers. But like true to this team's form this year, losses, blowing leads, outshooting a team like 16-1 in the first period last night, and then giving up a goal right after a power play on a shorthanded 2-on-1 rush. Like, they always find new and interesting ways to lose. But just like it's just par for the course for this team. It's kind of Groundhog Day where they're just not a good hockey team and they find ways to lose. And that's what hockey teams that aren't good do.
It's just, I'm almost numb to it, Haggs, at this point. Like, I think, I remember being really passionate and like, what the hell's going on after that 7-2 loss to the Sabres, a month or so ago. And It's like, what is Nikita Zadorov doing? Like, what is this, what's this one doing? And, they almost kind of have had a weird surge. Like they outplayed the Leafs for a good portion of that game. They outplayed the Islanders certainly at the start, but it's more of the same with this team. They blow leads, or they can't score, or they don't get the timely save, or they have a defensive breakdown, or they have odd man rushes, as you said, after power plays or on power plays. And it's like, it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. And I got to be honest, Haggs, and I don't root for losses, but I'm team get the pick. Get the highest possible pick at this point. Honestly, and I hate that. I hate that.
Is that what Swayman is doing last night?
I think
right
he
now,
was.
you think, Evan, like allowing that 2-on-1 goal over his shoulder where he had a clear look at the shot, and he's done that a couple games in a row. Like, he has not looked sharp to me since coming out of Four Nations.
No, it isn't look sharp really at all this year. And there've been a couple stretches, but and the thing with Swayman is people are like, you got to trade him. You got to trade him before the no movement kicks in, and I disagree. What do you have after him? A and B. Don't make the judgment until we see the full season next year with a new coach and a full training camp and no contract drama and no drama of the coach being halfway out the door.
Yep.
So I'll give him that. But I mean, I don't blame people for being upset with him this year. I think he's completely underperformed, absolutely. And there have been some games he's stolen. I think it was like in early January when he was I think it was back then when he was kind of going and making 40 save performances and stuff. But
he had a good run in January and early February. Like I would say his best stretch was January, early February, sort of going into Four Nations. Like, that's why I say he hasn't looked sharp since coming out of Four Nations, because I actually thought before Four Nations he was playing okay. And I just feel like he has not been as good since he came out of that.
No, he hasn't. And again, even last night, Thursday night, it's a backbreaker. When you're out shooting the Islanders 16-2 and that shot goes in with 3 minutes left in the first, it's like, oh, man, dude. Like, and I know some goalies struggle with shots more than they do more shots. Like, some goalies want to have the 16 shots, not the 2.
Yep.
But you still got to make the save. But it runs through the whole lineup. I mean, this whole season, everybody outside of David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie for the last 2 or 3 months has underperformed. And Hampus Lindholm before he went down with an injury. Everybody's underperformed. It's not their year. It isn't. That's why you heard Brad Marchand say what he did after Thursday night's game. Sometimes you don't accomplish the things you want to accomplish. That is essentially punting. And I don't blame him. I mean, it's demoralizing. But it's not their year. Haggs, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think this is the year for the Cup. I don't think it is.
What a bold statement by Evan Marinovsky right there.
Please don't
going way out on that branch right now, saying the Bruins aren't going to make the playoffs and it's not their year. I tell you,
it's a lot for me to get to that point. But
no, they're 4 points now out of the wild card after last night's loss.
They now have points, which is bananas. They should
now have two teams ahead of them that aren't in the playoff structure that they'd have to hop over in Ottawa and the New York Rangers. They lost to an inferior team last night that's behind them in the standings, which you can't do at this point.
Good.
If you're the Boston Bruins. And good segue, like I actually have what Marchand said last night. This is him talking after the game, just talking about sort of this season as a whole and sort of where he's at. And he's been asked a couple times, and he's been pretty good every time when he's talked about it. Marchand said the biggest thing when you go through adversity and it hits you in all different ways is it tests your character. There are ways to find to work through it, and the way you do that is as a group. It's what builds great bonds and friendships is when you go through the adversity together. It hasn't been the season we wanted, and we aren't having the success we usually have at this time of year. At the end of the day, we may not achieve what we want to do this year, but that doesn't mean we can't build to achieve something greater and bring it back next year. We're going to work every single day to improve and build our games, and we'll claw and fight every single game to get into the playoffs here. And I think that's exactly right on. I think he has a great perspective about this. And it's the same sort of past tense he's talking about this year's team in as Don Sweeney did last weekend. I think they both are very experienced people, and they understand what's going on here. And to be honest with you, Marchand kind of said similar things like this much earlier in the year. I think he had a bead on this team and what was going on much earlier in the year, that this might be building for next year and that this year is going to be a tough one. But I also find it interesting, Evan, that like he continues to talk like he's going to be here. He's talking like a leader that wants to be back, that wants to be part of something bigger next year, that understands that they're building towards something and wants to be a part of it. And I think he's been consistent in that regard, and I'll give him that because like He's a veteran guy now. I think Don Sweeney's giving him every out of the way he was talking about him last weekend of saying, our plan is to keep him, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. He's not signed, like, kind of hinting that they want to get a contract done if they're going to keep him rather than trade him. And I think Marchand's been pretty consistent that he wants to stick around and be part of the solution. So I would expect something to get done by between those two sides. But like I keep him. I keep Marchand. He wants to be part of the solution, part of the answer. He wants to figure it out and be part of turning this around. I think he does not want his captaincy with the Bruins to end, with them missing the playoffs and this season being, a pretty big disappointment. There are other guys I trade. Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau is getting held out of the lineup, I think, because they want to trade him and they don't want him to get hurt. Trent Frederick did get hurt the other night. We'll see how that goes as far as the deadline goes. But I do think there are players that they want to deal, and I just don't think Marchand should be one of them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My favorite take right now, Haggs, is the old, they can trade Marchand and he'll just re-sign here in the offseason. That's my favorite little take going on right now.
Well, that would be the smartest, shrewdest thing to do, right? Like that would be really smart if you have some kind of handshake, wink, wink deal where you get a first-round pick as trading him a rental and you can build up what he wants to rebuild here and move it forward. But I think, Marchand doesn't want to play, and he doesn't want to have another team on his NHL resume. I think he wants to be one of those guys that's a lifetime Bruin, and I get that. And I think he's earned that respect.
He has. My take on it is if someone comes along and offers you something you can't refuse, or a big package for Marchand, and what's that big package? I keep saying if it's a first and like a high-end prospect, or a first and a high-ish end younger player with control, I consider it. I think it's malpractice to not consider it, but I also agree that I think they believe that they can jump right back into at least being a playoff team next year, and he helps you with that. Now, are they correct in that assessment? I mean, we can go down the list of, do you trust Nikita Zadorov to up his play next year? Do you trust that Elias Lindholm is going to be a much better player next year? Do you trust that, McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm will be back and they're different, is Jeremy Swayman going to be being a true, what he's actually worth as a goalie, what he's being paid? So there are all those questions, but I think you don't have a lot of wing depth behind Pastrnak going forward. You just don't. There are, Zacho is supposed to be there. He's back at center. Morgan Geekie, I imagine they re-sign. He'll be there. But Marchand is a guy you can rely on, and he hasn't been a top line wing this year. He's been actually a middle six wing basically, and he's still produced. He's your second highest point getter. And I think he can continue to do that next year. My thing is, like, I would be interested though if you could get a first and a high end prospect, and I know that that's a loser mentality. This team does need to retool. They do. And that helps you. And I think if we were looking at another team and it was, 36-year-old franchise guy, team kind of in no man's land a bit, has some chunky contracts on the books. I'm not talking about Marchand, obviously. He's getting him cheap. But I think you'd look at that and go, well, trade that guy to get the picks, to get the assets. Now, we know that it's not that easy. We know that I don't know if there's anybody in that room ready to be the next captain. And I think that matters. Fans were like, oh, that doesn't matter. It does matter.
Yeah.
It absolutely does matter. So that's why I haven't committed to either side of the fence on this. Because it's very it's dependent on what you get, what you would get for Marchand, and the realisticness of it. Like, they don't do business like that either. Sweeney, I mean, who was the last franchise great they traded? Ray Bourque?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that was the last one. So I think we're at that point where you have to consider it. I tweeted the other day a clip of Connor and I talking about it, and I just kind of made the case for it. And people are like, why are you fueling this narrative? And it's like, well, first of all, we have a podcast to do. Do you want us to talk about the team on the ice? Would you like us to talk about the second period?
Evan, talk about the prep playoffs. Screw them.
Want to talk about Elite Eight? I'll gladly do it. That's what I care about right now.
Screw them. Talk about it.
But I think it's a fascinating storyline of he could be traded. Sweeney's comments didn't lend to being like he's 100% getting re-signed on Sunday. So we got to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, Sweeney's comments were putting the ball in Marchand's court. Like, if you want to, we want you to be a lifetime member of the Bruins. That's the plan. But like, you've got to play ball with us on a contract, and it's got to get done. And I think, that's smart. That's smart management work by him, is sort of putting the ball in Marchand's court and saying, like, if you want to be here, you got to get something done. And if we don't, we might have to deal you at the deadline. And that is using the trade deadline as leverage to try to get a contract done with Brad Marchand and his representation. I think that's a smart thing to do. What's interesting about that is, like, I wonder if the Bruins prefer to go year to year with him now, because he's at that age where you can do 1 year incentive-laden contracts and sort of go year to year. And he wants, 2-3 years, kind of like where Stamkos was at with Tampa Bay, where I'm sure they wanted to go shorter term and kind of take it year to year. And it seemed like he wanted certainty. And he wanted to get one last, like, 3-year, $18 million, like, whatever, one of those, like, last.
Things are going great for him in Nashville right now.
Well, hey, that's the cautionary tale right now. If you're Brad Marchand, is like going somewhere else and it turning out that way. And but it's all, and Tampa, like, they had some tough times and people were pissed and the players were pissed, I think, in management, but they're friggin' red hot now, and they're like in a good spot, and they're better with Gunsel, and they're a better team now, and they've sort of retooled and are in a pretty good place. So,
and they traded Sergachev.
Yeah,
that was a bold move to sort of a little bit of a retool on the fly of.
Yeah,
because they got they gave them Connor Geekie. Was it a first as well? Like, they got a legit return out of that, and that's a great. I mean, I don't know if the Bruins have a guy like Sergachev to deal. No. Swayman would actually be the only one that you could get like that kind of return for, and I don't think that's a smart idea.
No, I don't think so either. And you mentioned Lindholm, and you mentioned next year and players turning it around, and will they be better? And I think they will be. They've got some cap space to make moves. I think there's an argument to be made that if they held a decent amount of the group together, they have to make some moves. There's no question about it. They have to shake things up a little bit. They've got to trade some players from this group. They've got to make some changes. But I do think it's reasonable to assume that the new players are going to be better. I really, watching Elias Lindholm these last few games, I think he's been markedly better than he was before the Four Nations. And part of me, the pessimistic sort of like conspiracy theory, like always sort of like thinking about these things, part of me wonders if he was in a little bit of a cruise control because he didn't want to get hurt for Four Nations. And now we're actually seeing a little bit more like the real Elias Lindholm for the final stretch run here, now that we're through that. Because I mean, that used to be a thing. Like, back in the day when the NHL were in the Olympics, I had players telling me, like, I play with a European guy that won't go into the corner. He's a defenseman, won't go in the corner to get a puck if it's an Olympic year, because he doesn't want to get hurt. And he's forcing me to go do it.
That's incredible.
Like, that stuff happens. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff definitely happens. So, like, it's that part is interesting to me. It would explain a lot, along with like the change of scenery, like, getting used to a new teammates, all that stuff. It might all be part of the same sort of like thing. But that's something to look out for. And like, just watching him the last few games, I was like, he looks a lot better. Like, offensively, he looks a little more sort of in the flow and a little more involved than he was before. And maybe he got some confidence from the Four Nations. Maybe that helped him doing something like that. But I also wonder if there's a little bit of that too, where like he was keeping a little in the tank and saving a little to make sure he was going to be in there. And now it's just, he's going all out. But bottom line, there are changes starting to come to this Bruins team. There will be changes coming. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a sec. Oliver Wahlstrom getting waived. That was one thing that happened yesterday, the first sort of shot over the bow. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It is fun, and it is super duper simple. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Here's some picks for this week. John Tavares, less than 0.5 assists. Artemi Panarin, more than 3 shots on goal. For the
I like these.
Marcus Foligno, more than 2.5 hits. When was the last time Marcus Foligno played in a game and he had less than 2.5 hits? Come on. That's all he does.
Vietnam was the last time that happened.
Damn, that was tough. All right, you can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your accounts this sports season. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Sure. Speaking of Marcus Foligno, I'm rewatching Shoresy because the new season is out on Hulu, and I love that they got the shout out in like the first episode because it's set in Sudbury, Ontario, and that's where they're from.
I didn't realize that.
One of the characters was talking about playing in a golf tournament with the Foligno brothers.
Shoresy, I've seen people tweet about it. I've never watched it. I don't have.
Oh, you haven't watched it?
I have not watched it.
Oh,
no.
dude, watch it. It's really good.
I've heard it's good. It's good.
You would like it.
It's good.
You would enjoy it. One of the best parts of it is like Shoresy, the character, also is reffing like it must be midget games on like Friday nights or whatever when he's not playing. And him going back and forth with like the midget players when he's reffing the games and throwing them in the box is like worth the price of admission to hear the stuff that they're saying back and forth to each other.
Is that the show with Sean Avery?
He's in this latest season, I guess. Yes. So he's in this fourth
season.
I'll check it out. But like RA has been in that show too from really? Spittin' Chicklets. Yes.
Okay. All right. I got to check it out. Thank you for that. Because I'm almost done with Better Call Saul. So I'm
which is good.
Now I need a new show.
So you never watched Letterkenny either?
No.
Okay. Put them both down.
Okay.
Letterkenny and because Letterkenny is the show that like Shoresy kind of offshoots from.
Okay. So watch Letterkenny first?
You don't need to. No, you can go back and watch Letterkenny afterwards, but watch Shoresy first. You will enjoy it. It's pretty funny. And it's all about hockey. It's very worth watching for a lot of different reasons. But it'll give you a laugh. Plenty of them. All right. Let's get back into it. Oliver Wahlstrom waived yesterday. 1 goal in 16 games. Took a high sticking penalty in the offensive zone that was not good and was kind of a bad turning point in that loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think this is just kind of the first shot over the bow here from the Bruins management, sort of in what's going to be a number of changes. I think there's going to be changes to this team. Like, it's a results-oriented business in the NHL, and when you're not getting them, stuff is going to happen. Guys are going to disappear. Jobs are going to go to somebody else. That's just the way of the world in that league. And I frankly, we're going to see more of it at the trade deadline.
You better. And I think that's the thing. You have so many guys who aren't pulling on the rope or aren't, contributing at all. I mean, obviously he's hurt right now. He got hurt against Toronto, but Trent Frederick. And that's, it's not been his year. There are games you don't notice him. Stats are awful. Like Morgan Geekie was actually that way for the first 2 months. He was scratched quite a bit. And then, ever since Sacco took over, he's been on fire.
Yep.
But you have a lot of guys, especially in the bottom 6, who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, aren't producing at all. And again, I know, a lot of people have been wanting Georgi Merkulov and Fabian Lysell up and play the young guys. And obviously you have to have a balance of that. But I look at Merkulov, and I know he's been a little cold of late down in Providence. But, you look at the production over the last 3 years down there. And I know that they're in a playoff push down in Providence, and it's good to be involved in that. But I also think you kind of need to see what you have in Merkulov at the NHL level. Now, he's not stepping into the best situation. But I also think, there are spots for him up in the lineup. Patra, we don't know what the status of what he is right now after the dirty hit he took from Brock Nelson.
What did you think of that last night, by the way?
I thought it was dirty. I
wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I would put it on Brock Nelson, but that friggin' backup goalie not paying attention when he's opening and closing the goddamn door. That is totally 100% on him. where you could see he
Yeah.
wasn't even looking in that direction, like to see the players that were coming, like totally half-ass and working the door there.
Who was the backup goalie? I think was it Marty Turco? It was a bunch of years ago. It was in a joking way. I think Barrett Jackman or one of the old Blues defensemen was kind of just leaning up against the boards, and Turco opened the door just so as he leaned back, he fell into the bench. It was funny. No one got hurt, and they were both laughing. But
Right.
Nelson, I didn't like that. I didn't like that play by Brock Nelson. I thought, come on. And of course, thankfully, though, Haggs, the Bruins went out. They got bigger this offseason. They got some tough guys like Dean and Brock Nelson was deterred from doing anything more after that. And thankfully the Bruins stood up to him. They pushed him a couple times. They showed him, and that's I can't.
If you're Matt Poitras, you're going to be thinking WTF like right now.
Yeah. And I also, if he didn't get hurt, I'd be like, oh, the Islanders traded for Matt Poitras mid-game. But he did get hurt, so I couldn't make that joke. But I'll make it here. But the whole, big tough guy thing I get annoyed with. And we talk about guys, how are they going to be next season? I am willing to give Elias Lindholm a full season next year, a good training camp. Hopefully he fits with someone. Hopefully they also go out and get a real number one center.
Yep.
Zadorov, I don't have high expectations for him. Because I think he is what he is.
Yeah.
And that scares me. And I felt this way when they signed him. It's all right. And I have to watch him get beat. I mean, even I ragged on this on Bruins beat earlier this week, but or poked the bear with Connor yesterday. They all blend together. But on the fourth tying goal by the Leafs, puck gets dumped in Backman Larson, and Zadorov goes into the corner with, I think it was Nick Robertson. Robertson's 5'9".
Yeah.
Comes out with the puck, no problem. Beats him to the net. Zadorov is left, just stick out, reaching.
Yep.
And they score. And it's you see that, and then Zadorov's chasing Nelson around the zone, just push. I mean, who cares? And that's why I just, the whole, they don't need to get bigger. They don't need to get tougher. They need skill. They need speed.
Well,
that's the biggest thing they need, in my opinion.
Here's the thing, Evan. They got bigger and they got heavier for the playoffs. That is why they got
of course,
to be more effective in the playoffs. The problem becomes you need to have a balance on your team. You need to have enough
skill and
enough speed to get to the playoffs in order for the physicality and the heaviness to benefit you. If you don't even friggin' make the playoffs, it doesn't matter. That, and it's you kind of have to build your team. And I've had conversations with NHL executives about this. You kind of have to build your team for 2 seasons. You have to build a team that is going to be able to get enough points during the regular season to make the playoffs. But then you also have to build a team that is going to withstand the absolute gauntlet that is the Stanley Cup playoffs, when you have to have big, tough, physical, mean, nasty players. If you don't have both, and you don't have enough of both, and you don't have them sort of married together, it's going to do you no good, and I think
I agree.
Went a little over into the heaviness without having enough skill and without having enough players that could play to get them there. And when you watch this team on a nightly basis, they are light forwards. There's no question about it. They are light forwards that can make plays, make things happen, skate, far too often chasing the puck, far too often not making other teams react to what they're doing and kind of chasing the other teams around. There's too much of that going on right now.
I wonder, I'm so curious what they're going to do at the deadline, because I think the obvious thing is, all right, you get some draft picks. My biggest thing is priority number 1, get into the second round in this year's draft. Yeah, I know this is not a strong draft in comparison to the past couple, but you need to make picks.
Yep.
If you get a second round pick somewhere. So that's number 1. Obviously, if you can get back into the first, I was reading, Jonas Siegel wrote a story in The Athletic about potentially trading Coyle to the Leafs, which would, and he mentioned a first and a young roster player. And it's I'd consider it. I don't love that. I hate it. I hate trading him. But I would heavily consider it. I have no problem there. Get a first round pick. But I also wonder, do they go in a different direction? I was reading 32 Thoughts last night, and Matthias Michelli from Utah is I think on the trading block, and so you have that, and then I forget who it was the other day mentioned Quentin Byfield, and it's do you think, is there any chance the Bruins go big for a guy like that? And my whole thing, and I was talking to Connor about this, I want them to make their first round pick this year. Make your first, because it's likely going to be inside the top. It probably is going to be inside the top 10.
Yep.
But if you could trade it to get a Quinton Byfield, who's 22 and fits your kind of number one center, you have to consider it. Now, do you want to deal that for Alex Tuck? No, I don't think you do. You do. So I am curious if they do go the route of a good roster player comes available and they want to have them long term. I wonder if they go that route.
I would rather have them trade a first round pick for Quinton Byfield than use the first round pick to select a guy like Dean Letourneau.
Oh yeah, obviously, yes.
Bottom line,
because essentially you're hoping to get Byfield,
an NHL player that you think is going to have an impact, and you think is a really good fit for your team, is going to fit a huge need. I would much rather have that. And he's going to be under your control for a while. I would much rather have that than trust a group that, you know. I'm going to give Letourneau a little bit of time to develop, because he wasn't even supposed to be at BC this year. And I don't think that was the guy that they really wanted at that pick. I think that was kind of like what the pick they made after the guy that they really wanted got taken. But watching him at Boston College a few times, he does not look like he can keep up with what's going on out there. He just does not look like he is up to it this year. And even as a young kid that's raw, when you take a guy in the first round, you expect a guy that's a first round pick to really flash in a Hockey East setting. You expect to notice him in a really good way when you watch him play. And I've seen him play a couple times now this year, and I've watched him and I've been like, that does not look like a first round pick to me.
I know. I deal with this all the time with New England Hockey Journal, where a player leaves a level early. We could do 10 podcasts on this of guys leaving levels early and wanting to jump to the next level when they're not ready. And in fairness to him, he decommitted from Northeastern because they wanted him to go to the USHL, and then BC got him, and BC was like, "You're going to the USHL," and it wasn't until Will Smith left that. So it's not fully on Dean Letourneau, and I'm not going to.
He was also Evan. He was saying at the draft that maybe he's going to be at BC for 2 years.
He
has had no clue going into this, no clue what. And I blame the people around him if they were giving him the idea in his head that he was going to be a guy like that. He had no clue what he was getting into when he went to development camp with the Bruins, when he went to Boston College. The stuff he was saying, you're like, buddy, this is
I watched him.
It's a lot tougher level than you think it is, dude.
It is, and I watched a lot of him at St. Andrews. And look, phenomenal player for sure, and was big for that level. But he was also 18 going up against prep teams, and typically the rule of thumb with older kids dominating prep. He was playing prep school hockey. When older kids dominate prep, you don't. All right, well, we'll see what you're like in junior, because you're playing against a lot of younger kids, and he could go a full game, and there were some shifts you wouldn't notice him, but it still put up 3 points because he's 6'9", and and so my thing with him is I'm preaching patience. I'm going to give him patience. I'm not going to call him a bust this year. I agree. I'm giving him a couple years at BC. I think that's what he needs.
Yep.
And don't worry, because next year the Bruins will have James Haggs at BC as well. So it'll be, it'll all work itself out. You'll have them together. You'll have the number one and hopefully number two centers at BC next year. So
if
Haggs needs another year,
that would be a good thing.
Haggs badly needs another year at BC, in my opinion. If he jumps to whatever NHL team drafts him, it's a massive mistake.
I watched Letourneau. This was 2 weeks ago now. I saw him play again at BC, something like that. And I was hoping, February, he's been there a while.
Yeah.
See some improvement. He's going to be a better player. Usually this is the time of year when kids are playing up at a different level all year that you start to see okay, they're getting it now. They're up to speed. They're making an impact. You see improvements. It's hard to see it day after day when you're watching players, but I feel like when the season starts in October or whatever, and then you get to February, that's when you really start with young players seeing tangible
yes.
Much better than they were earlier in the year. And I have not seen that with him. So that raises a little bit of a caution flag with me. I still would give him until next year just because he's so young, the level he was coming from, and because he wasn't supposed to be there. But I'm starting to allow for concern about him and that conversation to happen, because just based on what I saw at Dev Camp, and now based on what I've seen after almost a full year of college hockey with him.
Oh, definitely. You can have concern. I have no doubt about that. With him, it's interesting because I also wonder if BC is the right spot for him,
Yeah.
and not they're phenomenal at developing. That staff is really good. They're really good with high end guys. The Bruins like them.
Yep.
But I also wonder if Letourneau should be in a spot where he's the guy. Not quite yet.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ready to be the guy. But Tage Thompson was at UConn, and I know that's an easy. But I look at I'm not comparing them, but Cale Makar was the guy at UMass, and I think that benefits players when you're the guy. Whereas at BC, now their recruiting class next year I don't think is super big on high end talent. So the top six, I mean, they'll lose Leonard, they'll lose Perot, but you'll have Stiga, you'll have Hagens. So maybe there's a spot for Letourneau somewhere in the top six next year. You better hope that's the case. I would imagine Gassot is probably gone. So I but I also look at there are other schools. Northeastern probably would have been pretty good for him because we're all right, dude, you're going to be the number one center or you're going to be the number two center your freshman year. And it's trial by fire, but you're being relied on. You're in big situations. I don't think he is over at BC. They've had him on the fourth line for long stretches of time.
Yep.
And that's not their fault. They have a lot of high-end kids. They got to win games. They're not a development, place. They're there to win games and win championships. So I almost wonder if, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I do wonder if in a year or two he enters the transfer portal, and it's I want to go somewhere and do my own thing.
Wouldn't be
but
the
I
first
think
BC kid to do that.
No, he wouldn't. But here's the thing, right? If he did flame out, it was clear that he was not the guy. That's when front office people start to lose their jobs. I mean, I remember the Jay O'Brien pick really was a crushing blow to that Flyers front office at the time.
Yep.
They picked him 18th,
Yep.
and I think he was slated as a second or third rounder. He was right out of Thayer.
Yep.
So I just wonder if Letourneau's a similar thing where it's that could have been avoided. But we'll see. There's time. There's time.
Yeah, I think there have been other picks that have caused changes in the Bruins scouting stuff. I think that Urho Vakanainen pick a few years ago, and they ended up changing their Finnish scouts in part because of that selection, because he was just not a
He was at Four Nations, Haggs. What are you talking about? He was incredible.
Because they suffered 20 injuries to their back end before they could get him.
They were all right, Urho. Did you see the clip of
Marchand? Every single game.
Marchand calling him a pigeon. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And credit to Vakanainen, he just laughed. He's who cares?
He's yeah, you're right. I am a pigeon.
I imagine if you're playing with Marchand for a while, then you're on the other team and he's chirping you. It's hilarious. That's a rite of passage.
But it's he's a defensive defenseman that's got zero offensive presence at the NHL level. You do not pick guys like that in the first round,
No.
And he had no offensive ability back then. That was people recognized it very early, and there was no reason to pick a guy like that as a first round.
What was that draft? Was that 18? No, 17.
It was somewhere in there. It was 17, 18. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but it was one of those years. All right, quick before we go, Evan, give us a quick.
Haggs, before I get to that.
Yes.
The guys after back, it was 2017. Josh Norris, 19. Robert Thomas, 20. Philip Heel, 21. Jake Ottinger, 26. And then you get into the next round, Jesper Boquist, Nicholas Hague. Jason Robertson was the 39th pick. Oof.
Yeah.
So, great. You know who the Bruins' second round pick was that year?
No, I can't remember.
Studnicka. So future Patrice Bergeron. There you go.
After Jacob Forsbacka Carlson, he was the next.
That's
one.
right.
Don't forget.
That's right. Oh my God. And Jack Edwards would never call him JFK because he didn't. I think it was something to do with he didn't want to ever say JFK was hit in the face or shot or something, which I thought was hysterical.
JFK was hit by a shot.
Yeah, by a shot.
All right. Quick prep update, Evan.
It's
where we at the prep season. What are you looking at? What playoffs? Who do you think is going to win?
Well, playoffs. The bracket comes out Sunday. Prep playoffs are 1 week, Sunday to Sunday. It's over like that.
Yeah.
Prep championships, because there's a Elite Eight, best 8 teams, and there's small and large school championships. That's based on how many kids are at the school, obviously. All the championship games are next Sunday at UConn, the 9th. So it's a great day of hockey. I highly recommend if you're in the area. You see a lot of scouts, a lot of college coaches. It's great. But locally, if you're in Boston and you want to see some good hockey, on Wednesday, all the quarterfinal games happen. And the way the Elite Eight looks like it's going to shape out is a bunch of local Boston teams are going to host. Dexter should host a game. St. Mark's and Belmont Hill are actually on track, one of them to host the other for a Elite Eight quarterfinal game, which is bananas. Those are two rivals, so that'll be great.
Yep.
As for who will win the Elite Eight, I don't have a favorite. I genuinely believe, and I didn't feel this way last year, I didn't feel this way the year before. I think any team in the 8 could win. I just watched Holderness beat Dexter. Holderness, the win brought them into the Elite Eight. I could see them going deep. Like, honest to God.
Holderness, by the way. I drove by there when
awesome.
I was when Finn was playing in the Waterville Valley tournament. It's beautiful, beautiful area up there.
Yeah, and it's an outdoor rink.
Yep.
Outdoor rink. It's heated. They have hot cocoa and all that stuff. So if people are around and you want to see good hockey, I highly recommend Wednesday, and then Saturday are the semis. But Wednesday's the big night for it. I'll be watching 4 games on my laptop because I can't be at one and miss the others. So it'll be it's a fun week. It's a sprint. I wish it was 2 weeks. I wish you could spread it out a little bit, but it's over and it's starts and ends like that. And then MIAA tournaments going on at the same time. So
it is.
A lot of stuff going on.
I may get out to that. I went to Arlington last year and saw them in one of the playoff games in their home building. And I think I may try to do that again this year with Finn. He had a really good time watching John Missouri's crew. They're always a good take and a good team. And the crowd there in Arlington is pretty awesome to watch interact. It's a great high school hockey atmosphere. My alma mater, Stoneham High School, has got a pretty good team. So I may go watch them as well. But there's a lot of really good high school hockey out there, and it's at its best. And this goes on for a couple weeks, Evan, to your point. Like the Elite Eight, what you're talking about, it's kind of like the club hockey playoffs. They're over in a week. There's
it's done. I hate it. I want the most amount of content.
The next day for the following year. It's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah. But the thing with high school hockey is and people mass high school hockey, yes, it is not the same game it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. No. But the passion and the fan, the student sections, and as I said to you before, you want to go to Arlington St. Mary's on Saturday, that's great. You got to get there an hour before.
Yep.
And it's just fun, and it's a great atmosphere, and I highly recommend it. Obviously, the Bruins right now are not a great product to watch, and it's sort of the dog days. This helps break it up. It helps me. I mean, my focus is mainly prep and MIAA. So for me, it's this is a fun time. And then you got to talk Bruins. Oh my God, this is terrible. But I really do mean it. I think it's a great thing to get out to, and prep and MIAA. So lots of stuff going on there. And if you're in Rhode Island, playoffs are going on, and Connecticut and all that. So a lot of playoffs this time of year, which is fun.
Very good. And if you're at the Elite Eight games, you see Evan, pull him aside, pull him away from all the NHL scouts he's going to be talking to and the agents. And
I don't know about that.
Time and talk his ear off because he loves that.
I love that. It's my favorite thing. And if you have a son or a daughter who plays, tell me all about them. Tell me I should write about them. There you go.
That's right. Yeah.
An elevator pitch.
Do a feature on my kid.
Yeah. That's right. He broke his arm when he was 12. He's overcome a lot of adversity.
All right. Evan Marinovsky, thank you very much. Let's also thank Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Evan Marinovsky, thanks for joining me, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody else out there, thank you for listening. We'll see you at the rink.